Hey, welcome to Sports Guys Extra. This is something we do every week, and we bring you up to date on all the hot topics in sports here. It's just on our KSAT TV app. It's also on all streaming devices as well as the web. So welcome. We're joined today by Larry Ramirez, my buddy over here, Jake Karberski down the street there, and we're all gathered to give us at least a little insight into what the hot topics are in sports. We're going to begin with the Dallas Cowboys. Just when you thought there was going to be no drama going into this training camp 1 week from this Thursday, and we're talking about this on the 17th of July, now we find out that some of his people are indicating that he wants a contract extension before he gets into camp, or at least one started. And that means the Cowboys are going to have to kind of take a step back if they're going to do this, because they're already working on an extension for both Dak Prescott and Amari Cooper, and their deal's in after this coming season. For Ezekiel Elliott, his doesn't end for another 2 seasons. So that's why the focus has been right now on Dak and Amari Cooper. But if you're talking to a lot of Zeke's people, they believe now is the time to strike, because he would not be even more value than he is right now to the Dallas Cowboys, because he's only set to make just under $4 million this season. Let's kick it over to Larry first. And Larry, what do you think about this latest development?
Well, first of all, I didn't assume there would not be any kind of drama heading into Cowboys camp, because I think every year there's some sort of drama heading into
never assume that.
Dallas Cowboys. Yeah, I don't ever assume that. And, you know, I can see why Zeke and his people are doing this. I mean, as I've said before, I feel that he is the Dallas Cowboys' most valuable offensive player. And, in fact, he might be their most valuable player, period. I know some people say Dak Prescott, but I've always said Zeke is the man. And as long as he's healthy and they feed him the ball, I think he can take them farther than if they just relied on Dak Prescott. So that being said, yeah, I can see Zeke saying, I at least want to have this being worked on before we go out to training camp, because I want to get paid, and he deserves to get paid among the elite backs, because that is exactly who he is. He is an elite running back.
Jake, an argument in his favor is the life expectancy of a running back in the NFL. And if you said 5 years, I think you'd be being generous in this case, especially with how fast and hard these defensive backs and defensive frontline people are able to hit you now. Do you think this is the opportunity that he needs to take now, or is he being somewhat selfish in the fact because his teammates Dak and Amari have their deals coming up a lot sooner than him?
Well, I think a lot of players now, selfish or not, the team really isn't their first priority. They're more concerned about getting paid themselves. But if I'm the Dallas Cowboys, I'm sorry, I don't think Ezekiel Elliott deserves any contract negotiations this offseason, specifically because, you know, he can't take care of his business off the field. They're more concerned about whether or not he's going to be even eligible to play, considering his off-the-field shenanigans. So I'm sorry, I don't think you've even deserved to have your contract considered, because you can't take care of your business away from playing football.
And you know what? You bring up a good point, because now there's been another development in that incident in Las Vegas this past May, in which the NFL has already said he did not violate the personal conduct policy. That said, now the young security guard that Ezekiel pushed to the ground is now attempting to file charges against Zeke. There's a question whether or not those charges will actually be filed by police, but he's asked for that. He's filed an assault charge against him. And if that happens, does that change what the NFL does to Zeke? Larry?
I don't think so, because Roger Goodell's already said you didn't violate, our policy. I think this is just this guy looking to capitalize, on a situation. And I don't know if he ever cleared this up, this man, but I know at one point he said that he didn't feel that Zeke's apology was sincere.
Right.
And I don't know if he's, changed his tone on that, not that I've heard of. So I think this dude is just trying to get money. Zeke makes a lot of money, so he's going to try to do this. He doesn't care what the NFL has to say.
You bring up a good point, because Elliott's attorneys are saying basically this is extortion, is what's happening, because he's already been cleared by the NFL. Now this young man, basically after he was cleared, has come back and said he's going to file charges, which he has. Now it's up to the police department in Las Vegas to decide if those charges are actually go forward, and we'll wait and see what happens. Jadeveon Clowney is not going to get a long-term deal, at least not now. And that means he would have to at least at some point sign the franchise tag, which we understand he's not done yet. Do you see this being a problem for the Texans? And specifically, do you think Jadeveon Clowney reports to training camp?
Me or Jake?
I'll
Jake, you
take-
first.
Jake first.
All right. Well, I don't think it's going to be a huge issue, and I think he will report to training camp on time simply because the Texans don't have a GM, and so you really, in terms of negotiations or extensions or getting the contract that he wants, because the Texans are taking a GM by committee approach and they're kind of basically putting some duct tape on this season from that perspective, he's not going to get the money he wants or the contract he wants, in my opinion, this offseason. So you've got, or prior to this season, so you really don't have any benefit to holding out if you're Jadeveon. I think he's going to sign the franchise tag and show up to training camp on schedule.
But Larry, is Jadeveon going to sign that franchise tag? Because remember what the Texans did. They signed him up, as far as a franchise tag is concerned, as a linebacker, not as a defensive end, even though he played more snaps as a defensive end, and the franchise tag would be higher, closer to $17 or $16 million. Do you think he signs the tag?
Yeah, I agree with Jake. I mean, I think right now he needs to sign. He needs to play for that because that's still a lot of money. And I think at the end of the day, you know, he doesn't want to let down the rest of his guys. Sure. And you're still making a lot of money to play football. And I understand all these guys want long-term deals because of possible injuries, you know, and this and that. But, dude, you're one of the best players on that team. They're franchising you. You're set to still make some pretty solid coin. So play, and I do see him reporting.
Is it a good idea for the Houston Texans to go the entire 2019 season without a general manager, Larry?
Ooh, that's a tough one.
Yeah.
Apparently, they feel like they can, you know, with Bill O'Brien and some of his staff. Is it the smartest thing to do? I don't know. Maybe at the end of the season we'll know better. I'll tell you what, if they end up having a winning season and going deep in the playoffs, maybe this becomes a new fad in the NFL.
Do you think it's any in part that they only had Brian Gaines in for 17 months? They still owe him 3.5 years of pay, and in their mind, they're already paying for a GM. Jake, they don't want to pay for another GM, and that's why they want 4 guys to handle this on the front office staff?
I don't think money was the deciding factor there. I think simply because they couldn't get their guy, they wanted the guy for the Patriots.
Right.
And I think part of the reason that the Patriots dropped the tampering, charge was the agreement was the Texans would stop pursuing their associate GM to be the GM, or director of player development, whatever his position is. And so I think that's kind of contingent on that. I think if the Texans could, I think they would have hired their guy, and I don't think money was necessarily an issue.
All right. That said, let's talk about the NBA's antiquated free agent rules. You can agree with a free agent on a contract. You can't sign that free agent until July 6th. So 30th you can agree, July 6th you can't sign. And that came back to bite the Spurs probably more than anybody in this offseason. And that's when they thought they had locked up Marcus Morris on a 2-year, $20 million deal until the Knicks found all this money in free agency after things moved around, after Kawhi decided he was going to the Clippers, and they offered a 1-year deal, $15 million. The trouble is, in order to make room for Marcus Morris on the Spurs roster, they had to trade Davis Bertans to the Washington Wizards. So they were left holding the bag when Morris backed out. Not only did they lose Bertans, they lose Morris, and they have to sign somebody else. Is it time for the NBA, Larry, to update these free agent rules so this never happens again?
Yeah, I think that they should make that period shorter. I don't fault him on one hand for backing out because, I mean, he's a good player, but getting an extra $5 million a year is a lot for him. So I can understand him doing that. But at the same time, I think it's pretty chintzy, pretty cheap of him to be like, yeah, okay, I'm going to sign with you guys, and then he backs out. I wish, so-called handshake deals were a lot more solid these days, like they used to be way back in the day. So, but yeah, they need to shorten that period down, I don't know, maybe 2 to 3 days.
Sure.
That way these guys hopefully don't back out.
It's always interesting to me, you can't start negotiating until the 30th, but yet everybody has their deals in place by the 30th.
Yeah.
And Kevin Durant's announcing, I'm going to Brooklyn, 1 o'clock in the morning? So obviously they have...
Kawhi was at like midnight or something like that?
And Kawhi was the same way, 1 o'clock in the morning when he'd already called the other 2 teams to tell them he's not coming, and so the Clippers knew he was coming to them. That said, do the Spurs lose out, Jake, in free agency this year because of what happened?
Well, I think they did lose out on free agency simply because, they gave away Davis Bertans for basically nothing, and Trey Lyles is not Marcus Morris. Potentially he's got some talent, and maybe a change of scenery will help Trey, but you're not getting the same player that you had with Morris.
All right, college football, we'll wrap it up with that. Two things. First of all, we'll go with the Texas Longhorns. Sam Ehlinger is going to be the starting quarterback, obviously, coming off a great sophomore year, junior season. But two haters on him. Terry Bradshaw says he doesn't understand why quarterbacks go to UT. They don't amount to anything. And Baker Mayfield says, I don't like him. He knows I don't like him. I know he doesn't like me. What do you make of all the Ehlinger hate starting before the college football season even begins, Larry?
Well, I can get, Baker hate, being that they're, two Austin area guys, and I believe they went to different schools.
Yeah,
right?
Lake Travis, and then Ehlinger was Westlake. Right.
Yeah, and I can see it as well from the Oklahoma, the OU-UT standpoint, but I don't get the Terry Bradshaw one.
Not at all.
At all. That
It's because La
really
Tech
came out of left field.
La Tech and Texas opened the year against
I
each other.
understand
Still,
that, but
yeah.
I still don't get Terry Bradshaw doing that. That's just, I don't know. He's a maniac, I guess. I don't know.
Or he's turned into just a caricature of himself.
Yeah.
Meantime, over at the SEC, Kellen Mond declares himself as the best quarterback in that conference. Did that surprise you, Jake?
Well, since I'm very unbiased with the shirt that I'm wearing today, it did surprise me because Kellen is not, in my mind, a very boastful player. He said a couple of things that really raised some eyebrows. He kind of took a jab at the LSU defense,
right,
and then kind of said he was confident enough to say that he's the best quarterback in the SEC. I don't think he's the best quarterback in the SEC. I think that honor goes to Tua. And I'm not even going to say he's the second best quarterback in the SEC. I think the grad transfer, Kelly Bryant, who played against Kellen when Clemson was at A&M last year, Kelly Bryant, the grad transfer now at Missouri, I would say he's the second best quarterback in the SEC. Do I think he's a top 5 quarterback in the conference? Sure, but I don't think we're prepared to say that he's the best quarterback in the conference.
What do you think is the basis of that, Larry? Why come out and say that?
Oh.
Because you're just putting bulletin board material up early is all you're doing.
Yeah, I don't know. This is a little different for him because, like Jake said, he's not really that talkative of a guy, especially with boastful things, like that. I don't know. Maybe coach got to him somehow and said, "I want you to be."
Right.
A little more outgoing, maybe, obviously not like that, but, maybe somebody wants him to be fired up and be more of a vocal leader, and so, that's what he did. Even his days here at Reagan, he was a quiet guy, where we talked to him.
Right.
He didn't really get boastful like that, so that's really out of left field for me. I can't tell you why he did it other than maybe that's really what he believes, and he's out there to prove that he's the best quarterback in the SEC.
All right, we'll see what happens. All right, thank you, Larry. Thank you, Jake. Thank you for joining us on our Sports Guys Extra here on the KSAT TV app and all of our streaming devices, as well as KSAT.com. We'll see you next time.